So guys, you heard the 3-bell salute. You know why we're here. The first thing I want to do is I want to open up this podcast with a moment of transparency about how I feel when it comes to one, the immortal Hulk Hogan. And unlike everyone else, or the majority who have come out and said that it's complicated, well, to me, it's really not that complicated at all. Hulk Hogan was a character that we all grew to know and love. Certainly if you're a baby of the 80s, and if you're a 90s baby, then you probably grew to love the Hollywood version of Hulk Hogan. However, the man behind Hulk Hogan was Terry Bollea. And that's the version that I grew to know. And in doing so, I want to be clear to point out that Terry Bollea was a flawed individual, just like you and I. Some would raise the question and ask, well, how flawed was he? Well, he was not flawed enough to be discarded, not flawed enough to not be reformed or rehabilitated, but he was flawed nonetheless. But who isn't flawed? The difference between Terry Bollea's flaws and your flaws is the fact that your dry bones are shut up in your closet, and they have not been exposed for all of the world to see, to hear, or to know about. Terry Bollea's flaws were made known to the world. And as I talk about Terry, I understand many people couldn't care less about Terry. And most who have an opinion don't even know who Hulk Hogan is. They aren't even wrestling fans. And it's sad that they only know of him, many by way of the controversy surrounding him and the use of that word, to which I want to be very clear. The use and manner of which he conveyed those racial slurs was absolutely wrong. Should have never been used, should have never been spoken. Nonetheless, this is the Hogan that many will only ever know. Not the Hogan that inspired many generations, young and old, from around the globe for 4 decades. They are only familiar with Hogan's faults and flaws outside of his starring character. And therefore, people take to social media, and of course, that gives many of them a voice, only if you decide to allow that voice to be sustained by acknowledging such. And I think you know by now, that don't work for me, brother. To make a long story short, I want to say this. I'm not here to be the judge or executioner of Hulk Hogan's legacy, nor defender. For that job will remain in the eyes of the beholder. However, I understand everyone's assessment of Hogan's use of the N-word, as it was reprehensible. It was hurtful. For me personally, to hear such rhetoric being used by Hulk Hogan towards black people was truly devastating. I was hurt. I was angry. It took me quite some time to deal with and process it all. Then I remembered Hogan and I having a conversation backstage in 2011 when he poured his heart out to me and shared some of the low points of his life and things he was currently dealing with. He opened up his phone and shared personal stuff with me that I should not have been privy to, but I am. From his family woes to his legal battles, depression, self-hate, suicidal thoughts, pill taking, beer drinking, the list goes on. He was really a broken man. And I don't know about you, but it's when you at your lowest of lows that you discover new things, find out you would do things or say things that aren't becoming of who you really are. So when the tape came out 4 years later, after getting past the initial shock and disappointment of it all, some things began to add up. Nonetheless, the uproar and the subsequent consequences that arose because of Hogan's remarks would seem indeed fitting. Hogan would apologize to an entire roster, as well as repeatedly apologize across the globe on every other single platform that he was on, as he continually said he was sorry. That's not who I am. Let me pause right there. I don't care, and this is just facts. I don't care if Hogan had got down on his knees and washed the feet of a line of black people. I don't care if Hogan had bought homes for 100 black families. For some people, there's nothing that you can do that will ever be enough to earn their forgiveness. That's just facts. But let's face the truth. Right now, let's face the truth. There's not one person that's going to see this, watch this, listen to this on this earth who is not a different person behind closed doors. Someone who is at work one way, and when you're away from your coworkers and you're no longer in the office, you're just totally different in the confines of your own home. Even your kids, when they leave for school, they become a different kid. Oftentimes, they become the real kid because they are no longer in the presence of their parent. And now they can be themselves. It's human nature for us all to be a renegade when we can be, and angels in the midst of those when we need to be. It's just who we are. It's not an excuse. It's not a cover-up. I'm just stating the facts. As I've said earlier, you have skeletons in your closet. We all do. But imagine you getting on social media right now and sharing the worst thing you've ever did in your life. How do you think the world will respond? Don't even answer. Because I doubt you'll be truthful enough to do such a thing. To go on the World Wide Web, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, whatever, and share your dark secret. You're not going to do that. That's why it's called The Secret. But here's one of mine I will share. Over 27 years ago, my best friend, whom I love dearly, was a real-life, walking, talking, size 15 barefoot walking, 300-pound, fire-breathing redneck named Chris Anderson. Him and his family stayed atop me in an apartment complex. Sometimes I would have to go upstairs and get an order, whether that was because they were being too loud, they were stomping, they were fighting, etc. And certainly if they were arguing with their mom, going back and forth. Because if I heard mom going off, then I knew I had to go intervene because she was a single parent. And the one thing I would not tolerate is anyone disrespecting their mother in my presence to this day. Anyways, One day things got heated between myself and my best friend, and we both used derogatory racial slurs towards one another. I called him the C word. He called me the N word. Of course, I had to knock him upside the head a couple of times before I quickly apologized, because my mindset was based off of society. And that was that I had the freedom to call him a derogatory term, but he was not allowed to call me a derogatory term. It's kind of messed up, ain't it? But those words, nonetheless, they were exchanged. Do that mean that he and I are both racist because we use such words at a heated, angry time in our friendship? Or were we simply trying to be hurtful and expressing ourselves in such a manner? Clearly, I'm no racist. And as for Chris Anderson, well, he was at my most recent charity event for the Love Alive charity, love-alive.org, if you care to look it up. And whenever we see each other, to him I am and will always be his brother. And to his beautiful red-headed daughters, I'm Uncle Elijah. I don't know about you, but that don't sound like a racist to me, even though he used that word in a hurtful manner. And neither does someone who texts me unprovoked, and I quote, "I love you, brother, with all my heart," unquote. That was Hulk Hogan. That was the Terry Bollea that I had the privilege and the honor of getting to know for well over a decade. And while this is not to try to sway you one way or the other, because I'm not, you have the right, it's your right to remember him as you choose to do so. But on the flip side, so do I. And as for me, I will celebrate the life of Terry Bollea and continue to be a fan of this larger-than-life superhero known to the world as Hulk Hogan, as I truly believe Hulkamania will live forever.